I am about a day late in posting this because I was at work yesterday, at my other job, and and all I heard about yesterday was about how we lost Queen Elizabeth. Um, Queen Elizabeth was the Queen of England for over 70 fucking years, and she was born Elizabeth Alexandra, Mary, on May 21st. Or sorry, she was born on April 21st, 1926, and she died yesterday. She was the Queen of the United Kingdom and the other Commonwealth realms, which I didn't realize how many Commonwealth realms that they had. But she was basically Queen of England from 1952 up until 2022. She was the Queen of 32 sovereign states during her life and served as a monarch of 15 of them at the time of her death. And she had the longest reign of any British monarch, and the longest recorded of any female of the states in history. Like I said, 1952 to 2022, that's 70 years. That's a pretty long run. Um, Now her husband had died last year, and then she just died this year. So because now with her death, her son Prince Charles would now be King of England, and he's 74 years old. Um, so he's gonna take over. Um, she was 96 years old, which is a pretty long life to live, and they don't know where she's going to be buried at because she basically she was born in London, England, or like actually the town was called Mayfair, but it's like a part of London, and then she died in Balmoral Castle in Aberdeenshire, England. If I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Not only did she serve 70 years as queen, but she was also married to her husband, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, from 1947 up until his death in 2021. Now, I don't know how many kids she had. I do know that she had Charles III, or these might be her kids. I think these are her kids: Charles III, and then Anne, Princess Royal, Prince Andrew, Duke of York, and Prince Edward, Earl of Wessex. Um, during the time of her grandfather's reign, Elizabeth was third in the line of succession to the British throne, behind her uncle Edward and her father. Although her birth generated public interest, she was not expected to become queen, as Edward was still young and likely to marry and have children of his own, who would precede Elizabeth in the line of succession. But when her grandfather died in 1936 and her uncle succeeded as Edward VIII, she became second in line to the throne after her father. But later that year, Edward abdicated after his proposed marriage to the worst socialite Wallace Simpson, and it provoked a constitutional crisis. Now, now a lot of people basically are shocked by her death. I was actually I knew that it was going to come eventually because, like I said, she was in her 90s, so it was going to be a matter of time before she would eventually die because not everybody lives forever. Um, Back in 1939, Queen Elizabeth had corresponded regularly with her parents, and she and her parents made the first royal transatlantic telephone call on May 18th of that year. And time does fly with a lot of stuff. Um, Elizabeth met her husband, Prince Philip, in 1934 and again in 1937, and they were second cousins once removed. Although King Christian the Ninth of Denmark, and third cousins through Queen Victoria. But they met again in 1939. Even though she was only 13, she said she fell in love with him, and they began to exchange letters. When she was 21 years old, they made their announcement on July 9th of 1947 that they were going to get married. Um, Now it says here, back in 1951, George the Sixth health declined, and Elizabeth frequently stood in for him at public events. She toured Canada and she visited the then President Harry S. Truman in Washington, D.C. in October '51. Her private secretary not sure if I'm going to say this name right. I might say it wrong. Martin Charteris He carried a draft accession declaration in case of the king's death while she was on tour. Now, in February of 1952, she was basically named queen after her father had died, and she chose to retain her name Elizabeth as her regnal name. Even though she was called Elizabeth II, which offended many Scots, as she was the first Elizabeth to rule in Scotland. She was proclaimed queen throughout all the realms, and the royal party hastily returned to the United Kingdom. But Elizabeth and Philip moved back to Buckingham Palace. Um, Now, there's the Commonwealth regions, which I don't know all about them. But she was head of the Commonwealth of all the Commonwealth realms, so I couldn't tell you much. Back in 1981, Queen Elizabeth survived an assassination attempt where somebody fired shots at her. During the 1981 trooping the color ceremony, and 6 weeks before the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana, 6 shots were fired at Elizabeth from close range as she rode down the Mall of London on her horse, in Burmese. Now, police later discovered the shots were blanks, but the 17-year-old assailant, Marcus Sargent, was sentenced to 5 years in prison and released after serving 3. Elizabeth's composure and skill in controlling her mounts were widely praised, but that October, Elizabeth was the subject of another attack while on a visit to New Zealand. Christopher John Lewis, who was at that time 17, had fired a shot with a 22 rifle from the 5th floor of a building overlooking the parade, but he missed. Lewis was arrested, but he was never charged with attempted murder or treason. But he did serve 3 years in jail for unlawful possession and discharge of a firearm. I'm not sure what the Golden Jubilee is, but let's see what this is. Okay, the Golden Jubilee was to mark the 50-year marriage and suffragette, or 50 years anniversary of her being named queen. In 2012, the Diamond Jubilee and longevity marked the fact that she had served 60 years on the throne. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it was hitting the United Kingdom. Elizabeth moved to Windsor Castle, and she basically sequestered there as a precaution. On April 5th, basically a televised broadcast watched by an estimated 24 million viewers in the UK. She asked people to take comfort that while there may have still a lot more to endure, better days will return and we will be with our friends again. Basically, her husband, Prince Philip, died on April 9th of 2021 after they had been married for 73 years, making Elizabeth the first British monarch to reign as a widow, or widower since Queen Victoria. She was at her husband's bedside when he died, and she remarked in private that his death had left a huge void for her to fill. But due to the COVID-19 restrictions in place in England at the time, Elizabeth sat alone at Philip's funeral service, which evoked sympathy from many people around the world. In her Christmas broadcast that year, she paid a personal tribute to her beloved Philip, saying that mischievous, inquiring twinkle was as bright as at the end as when she first met eyes on him. Now, despite the pandemic, Elizabeth attended the 2021 state opening of Parliament in May, and at the 47th G7 summit in June. On July 5th, the 73rd anniversary of the founding of the UK's National Health Service, she announced that the NHS will be awarded to the George Cross to recognize all NHS staff that was past and present, and across all disciplines in all 4 nations. In October of 2021, she began using a walking stick during public engagements for the first time since her operation that she had in 2004. Now, following an overnight stay in the hospital on October 20th and visits to Northern Ireland, the COP26 summit in Glasgow and the 2021 National Service of Remembrance were cancelled on health grounds. She also had a platinum jubilee. Elizabeth's platinum jubilee began on February 6th of 2022, marking 70 years that she had been queen. Later that month in February, Queen Elizabeth had started experiencing mild cold-like symptoms, and she tested positive for COVID-19 along with some staff and family members. She canceled 2 virtual audience tours on February 22nd, but held a phone conversation with Prime Minister Boris Johnson, following the day amid a crisis on the Russian-Ukrainian border. During the celebration of the Platinum Jubilee, Elizabeth was largely confined to balcony appearances, and she missed the national service of Thanksgiving for the Jubilee concert, but she took part in a sketch with Paddington Bear that opened the event outside Buckingham Palace. But yesterday, on September 8th, which was 2022, Buckingham Palace did announce that Elizabeth was under medical supervision at Balmoral Castle after doctors expressed concern. Now, I'm not sure what this is, but the statement read following further evaluation yesterday morning, basically. Elizabeth's doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health, and they have recommended she remain under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable at Balmoral, but Elizabeth's 4 children, along with her daughter-in-laws and grandsons, Prince William and Prince Harry, traveled to Balmoral. Her death was confirmed that evening in 1830, setting in motion something called Operation London Bridge, and because she died in Scotland, Operation Unicorn. Now, a lot of people were like this. Elizabeth was not one for the camera. She rarely gave interviews, and little was known of her personal feelings for anything. She did explicitly express her own political opinions in a public forum, and it's against convention to ask or reveal the monarch's views. So back in the 1980s, when Times journalist Paul Routledge had asked Queen Elizabeth of her opinions on the miners' strike of 1984 and 85. Her opinion was that she said it was all about one man, a reference to Arthur Scargill, which Routledge disagreed on. It was widely criticized in the media for asking that question, and Routledge said that he was not initially due to be present for the royal visit and was unaware of the protocols. Now Elizabeth had a deep sense of religious and civic duty, and she took her coronation oath very seriously. Now, aside from her official religious role as Supreme Governor of the established Church of England, she worshipped that church and also the National Church of Scotland. She demonstrated support for her interfaith relations and she met religiously with leaders and other churches and religions. She met with 5 popes like Pius the 12th, John the 23rd, John Paul II, Benedict the 16th, and Francis. Now, back in the 1950s, when she was basically named queen, in the 1950s, as a young woman at the start of her reign, Elizabeth was depicted as a glamorous fairy tale queen. But after the trauma of the Second World War, it was a time of hope, a period of progress and achievement heralding the new Elizabeth age. Now, people speculated about Queen Elizabeth's personal wealth, and it was a subject of speculation for many years. Now, back in the 1950s, or something like that, or during or back in 2002, as I should put it, and also 1989, it was reported in the Sunday Times Rich list 1989 that she was worth about $5 billion, which included state assets that were not hers personally, which would put it at today's $13.8 billion. Um, Now, if you like the video, if you you could give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. Um, you can also hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just as little as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way. And let's all remember Queen Elizabeth as we know her, and and give her the respect that she deserves. Basically, rest in peace, Queen Elizabeth. Um, you you will live on and you will live on in the afterlife. Even though I am an atheist, but she's gonna go to an afterlife. Um, so basically, let's give her the respect that she deserves, and I'll give her remembrance. And thanks for listening.